Hello, my name is Matthew Murray and this is Graspmancer and the level design Blockout. So, initially you start off in the trophy room of the Cadaver School, which is a group of people who use giant corpse parts to attempt to heal the world against the tyranny of the gaze of D. So you start off in this trophy hall alone, waiting for a drunken stupor, greeted by heavy amounts of fire and smoke raising to the ceiling, visually cueing the player to look up to see this place has been destroyed slightly, catapulted in, a few bits of reference, and the ceiling has fallen down, blocking the player's path, but the smoke leads the player to a chandelier and some light, hopefully detailing that they should traverse up. This is a very consistent theme of my game, is trying to guide the player's visuals to progression, but also reiterate the narrative of the game, such as these trophy heads, now through these tables and through the fire. Usually this would kill you naturally, or at least damage you, still undecided in the full game, but the intention is to avoid these to ensure your best odds. A few little bit of difficulty jumps. This isn't too punishing for the player, obviously, because this is an early area. I didn't want the player to just have death drops just in their tutorial phase. And the jumps progressively get a little bit more difficult here to test the player and make them feel a little bit out of their comfort zone. And upon getting up here, at a look around, you see the rafters and an entrance to them, maybe for an item later on, and you see a glimpse of an enemy and his shadow being drawn. Using light as a visual motif here to take the player's attention, as like this, with some light peering through and these boxes. If the player comes to look around, they get a visual at an enemy before they actually go up against them, which is a very valuable information for the next section coming up, as you'll see. Now, this is the first melee tutorial of the game, so after this jump section, you're now going up against the antagonistic characters in a one-on-one. Just a simple corridor, no jump functionality, just learning the basic attacks of the game. So you'll attack this guy, 1 or 2 hits probably to kill all these enemies. And these enemies are intended to path towards the player slowly, and they're essentially the ads of the world, just basic slime enemies. Now, leading the player more with light is an outdoor area, slightly signifying what's going on outside for a player who's looking. As you can see, an animated dragon, a ship sail, and another area and a house up here. And also a treasure chest, just to show the player that the loot will be given as a reward for their things. So jump, melee, tutorials, then reward. Now into a descent into the unknown. And of course, if you were a smart player and looked around, you're rewarded by having this knowledge, so you're not dropped down here without any clue of what's going to happen. So, gameplay of this area is very Pac-Man-esque, essentially the same kind of game style. No jumping, again, because I do not want to make the player use their platforming. I want to reiterate the melee combat, as of course the player's only killed one player. Another treasure chest here, and this is mainly to, if there's a player who's overeager, maybe an explorer type, would come here immediately, they would be punished for their overzealousness and be attacked by this enemy. But if they look through here, they're rewarded. So it's a bit of give and take in my game. Taking a lot of inspiration from Celeste level design, as well as FromSoft level design in the Dark Souls and Bloodborne series. This is kind of the way I've decided my game. So, upon leaving the hall, you're immediately greeted with these sapling world trees and the flapping wings of a great gaze of D dragon. And on the other side, you are greeted with the world trees growing and spiraling out of control. These are the trees of life of this environment, and they are the Goliath halves life force, and they were initially had a transfusion with the giants, which gave the world energy, but due to the extinction of the giants and Goliath, the world is now crumbling into decay. And the Cadaver School is attempting to grow their own saplings, and you can see this by these platforms that have now been taken over when they're trying to infuse their medicine into these trees, that this place is now being treated as simply it's simply being raided. And this is reiterated here by carriages and people from your school being killed by these beasts. So you as a player, you can come towards here and kill these enemies and hopefully save this guy if you're quick enough. And if you were to follow the main path, littered with the carriages, your journey will lead you to the forest basin, which you will see the south town, Cadaver School, being attacked. And you'll also see the giant ruins and the entrance to the main camp, and how the tree Dracos are helping these eye guys transport goods away via this route, and on the south route you'll see how they're taking stuff back to sea. So I wanted the player, if they were to take the main path, to be stopped by a few options, seeing this route, some tree platforms, and ranged enemies on the main platform, kind of dissuading this, as well as many other hidden enemies as you come into the camp, and this big enemy you cannot really see. And the intention was, if a player tries to come through here, sneak past, they'll quickly be punished by enemies and their placement. And the player could come up here and quickly kill these ranged enemies, but the situation they get put into is still pretty difficult, as this big enemy will be shooting them, and they'll have to try and get around this fire before these other two come in around both sides. So I wanted this path to be kind of pincered and set up for the player to fail. Obviously still doable if the player has a killer type player profile, but I want players more like explorers and achievers to be a little bit more interested in the world, see the platforms, check out the forest basin, see some treasure shown in the light, seeing some fire and some light peering through this opening, and back here seeing the flapping of wings and a little side entrance and some orange ships. So the player has quite a lot of options of where to go. So, if the player was to take the south path, if they're more of an explorer type personality, they'll be greeted to the southern peninsula of Goliath's half, with a few basic jumps and implicit storytelling of these giant ships, which has been used for the raid and how these Eye Apostles are taking over here. The player will be rewarded with also some explicit storytelling in the way of a monument, expressing how the time of giants is now over, and a little item just for a reward for coming to explore this area. A few more jumps just to give some more player gameplay, and to break up the pacing a little bit and give the player something to do as they're greeted with a lot of storytelling and world building details. Coming into this house is an enemy on the left hidden, so it's just surprise the player, and another one over here. And seeing over here you can see more of the ship coming in, and an enemy causing fire over here, so you get a little insight to that. And over here, an NPC, and I wanted this guy's intention to be giving some context on the Cadaver School and what's been going on over on this world tree here, the world tree that's being used to try and charge the nutrients of these sapling world trees. So the player will carry on up here, seeing the sights, and just to keep in mind, this player right now doesn't have their dash mechanic, therefore they're a lot slower than they usually are in gameplay, but this is the start of the game, so I wanted to start things slowly. Coming up to here, some gameplay storytelling details. This big eye basilisk starts causing fire on survivors of the Cadaver School, showing that the player will have to time when they run out and try and get past this at an opportune time. And maybe running into buildings could be dangerous is supposed to be taught to the player here. And this guy, teaches that behind the rocks is safe, just to really, teach the player that. So, provided the player understands that running in could be a bit dangerous, the player will get past, not getting burnt, just to be greeted by an enemy right at the door, hopefully catching them off guard, maybe causing them to back out, and they'll have to be careful of the fire again. So, if the player dispatches this, they can ascend up, hear some banging and shouting, and come kill this guy and save this guy here, and get some more information on how we have to help the Cadaver School district down below. So after carrying that out, another burning house to reiterate what's going on, there's a lift here which will activate and give the player a viewpoint as they descend of the fleeing Cadaver School members being burned by the Eye Basilisk. This Eye Basilisk flying in and then landing down to cause chaos down here in the camp as the Eye Apostles loot and steal and execute all of the Cadaver School members. This area, the architecture is supposed to be a small little fishing hamlet, and the design is Tudor inspired and Greek inspired here. Some simple stone types, because I didn't want the Cadaver School to be too proficient in using stonework, and I wanted a few elements of the world, such as this advanced elevator being the same stuff as the ruins, implying that the giants here before were a much more technologically advanced race, and the tyranny of David has caused the world tree barks to be the only real resources left in the world. So, dropping down into the area, obviously the lift will take you, you're immediately hit by this ranged enemy, obviously you can drop off and get him if a player is smart, or you can run around here and climb your way up. So a few different little options for players and how I wanted players to be rewarded for different things. If a player comes through here, through the forest basin, they could come parkour over and get up to this guy, or drop down from the lift. Just a few different little ways of how areas can play out. Just for context before, this is the forest basin entrance from the main path and forest entrance, which leads into this area, which will be a completely different encounter, of course, as you'll see these guys stealing. They'll be instantly aggroed by a lot of enemies. This guy will be very hard to get to, and the dragon will be coming in. So quite a difficult encounter for the player. They're free to leave, provided. But yeah, just different styles of gameplay for this. So this area has a lot of corpse parts here that are being escorted away. And as you can see, these guys are moving them through, taking them onto boats and moving them over here. And if the player is to follow this path, they cannot follow on the boats without the dash. But these areas, provided they have this ability, they can now traverse around and access these areas. So just to signify that this stuff will be traversable later, and a shortcut to get back into the hub town for the player later on, provided this becomes the hub world. A few little bits of exploration for players is to look around here, find out there's no way up. And there's a little path around here, and then you get your treasure, and both these enemies come towards you. So I just want to kind of misdirect the player every now and then just give these views to reiterate what's going on, forcing player perspective. And I just think that will be a good way of teaching the player of what's going on. So, and a lot of landmarking and visual cues, such as the ruins still up there, this lighthouse. I just want the player to fully know where they are in the game mode at all times, and understand that this is an area later on, with a bridge that you can't trespass without the jump as well. So all these little areas I want to keep as keynotes for the player to remember. If the player was to take the main path, it's only a short walk, and obviously the visual cues leading towards this. The main intention of this was usually for players to drop down here, and then they'll take on the basin with slowed movement, and provided they drop down, or if they get to the main camp, they'll see obviously these. But I just wanted every area to kind of feature its own way up and around obstacles. So regardless of which path you go to, you're always circled back into the content, and always given options. So if we were to carry on from the Southern Peninsula, we simply come through here and must take on the basin from the ground level. So regardless of what the player does, they're usually led back through content just so the player gets full use of what I've created here. And there's a lot of these enemies up on the platforms, just so simply keeping the pacing is jump, slash, jump, slash. And now dropping down into the back of the camp, the player is immediately greeted with a vantage point where they can now be out of the aggro range of these archers, or go take them on this way, or go kill this guy and get the backstab on the boss. And they're just given a lot more time to do what they want to do, and they can kind of scope out this area a bit whilst this main enemy sleeps and this guy is off patrol. So the stealth attack, would be probably 30% HP of this guy, just a way to help the player. Because they're already getting a lot of help in terms of the level design of how this combat encounter will work. So after killing this enemy, whether that be through kiting around, playing in the tents and avoiding arrows, you will be given a Graspmancer tool, which is the left hand, which has been taken and is the reason why you guys are being attacked. With this power now re-achieved, you can now access the next area. So, upon covering the bridge, you'll be greeted with two blocked entrances, both covered by world tree roots that are seeping into water and spiraling out of control, and now being inhabited by tree drekos and being used as chokeholds for the Eye Apostles. Up here is an encounter which will feature 2 larger Eye Apostle enemies and 5 drekos. So a new enemy type, very quick, fairly low HP, just a very aggressive enemy type that will attack the player whenever they get nearby towards these world tree roots because of the power they're trying to give off. So this is just trying to keep leading the player as the roots for progression, and the world tree roots are growing out of control, and these ruins are now inhabited by another creature. This is now reiterated again with these things lounging about in the sun. A visible chest here in the light, so quite a difficult undertaking for the player, but provided they want to, they can. But obviously I wanted to keep options open for players, and they can go around here and drop down and get it, and try and run out. There's a few different playability options, or simply go over this to avoid this enemy and go straight past them. I wanted to keep this kind of like this because these Drekos are not supposed to be full enemies. They're more just kind of wildlife here that's protective of its territory. So yeah, kind of optional for the player. I want these to be quite just like wildlife taking over this area, which is obviously a constant theme with the growing branches. So now touching down into this area, this is the giant ruins. There's a few different ways into the giant ruins here as well. Just wanted to kind of give the player a couple of options of how they go up. Climb up, dash over, depends what they want to do. Just kind of give the illusion of different paths, because this is more of an interior level design, because I wanted to change the pacing of the more open tutorial area over here and start testing the player on their grasp function. So a little bit of implicit storytelling is that these tree Drekos are now in these ruins, you know, lording it up, soaking in the sun. These ruins are obviously long been used due to the moss all over them and the branches taking over. So constantly reiterating that this place is overgrown and abandoned. The giant statues, leading to the idea of giants again. Players will try to go forwards and they'll bump into these giant steps and they'll be forced to look around, see the path up to the ruins, and see this branch leading the way. And then if the player is smart, they'll work out to go through here. This is quite led to the player, a little bit of light shining through, 2 enemies, one on this and led to here. But in my playtesting, a lot of my friends got stuck on this section because the stairs were a little bit too awkward. So maybe some ideas of changing that in a later iteration when I carry on this project. So you get a piece of treasure for reaching the top of the giant library. And now you see lots of fire going on. These are normal fires, but lots of burning library shelves. The tree Dreko in the top roaring, hanging off a branch, and the roof seeping in because branch is cracking in, giving the player a way to climb up because they're still too small to get over. And also the ruins kind of blocking off enemies, so you kind of don't get a full view of what's going on. So maybe you drop in here, and this guy is a sudden encounter. You have some room to play around. A fallen statue on that altar, pushed over bookshelves now being burnt up. This is just to create the sense of the gaze of D destroying giant history and medicinal records, simply for the sake of being evil kind of thing. That's why it's all on fire. So the player, to try and extrapolate from this, they're forced to jump over the bookshelves, over the fire, seeing the ruined decay. Broken statues being incorporated to the jumps. I failed that, but it's still placeholder, so you get the idea. Fighting this enemy being very defensive on the branches and not wanting you to climb the tree. Just supposed to kind of be an idea of what these tree Drekos are kind of about. Obviously you'll kill this enemy, and you'll keep grasping your way to the top. A few different routes to the roof here, all with viewpoints leading to points of relevant. Drekos up here, seeing some up there all the way. Fire leading that way. So I just wanted to give the player a few options of how they go about traversing. You see the basilisk causing this fire. The idea of this placeholder is that he'll fly around burning these stairs. So right if the player goes this way, it'll be a little mad dash. Get some damage in before he settles down in his boss arena. That's the idea there. So I'll take you on this path first. So this guy will be constantly harassing you with fire, and you'll be forced to race through this area as quick as you can, going through the broken ruins, climbing around, and using your horizontal grasp ability to its fullest. And then seeing this enemy, you'll fly down and take refuge in here, showing that this is where you're going to go. There's a few little fake jumps here, which I wasn't sure if was the best thing to give the player, but maybe just putting items on them. I did quite a few of these little designs here just to open up doors for later. Like stuff like this, maybe being traversable later, but for now this is the main intended path, or for this route at least. And then you get onto this area, seeing inside the room before you get to go in. It's just viewpointing. If the player looks around here, they'll see this enemy, maybe follow up, and then get grabbed by this guy. So a punishment for not going this way. It's a little bit cheap, but I don't want this area to feel fair, and just because you beat the boss to feel too easy. So yeah, the player can then go up here, but they can't get up here until they beat the boss. So you get the jump elite and then can go back this way, or take the lift. Just kind of giving the player some options, but only accessible after they indulge this content, because I don't want them to backtrack to get around here. Provided they go this way, they don't have to backtrack, but this way is more of a scripted section, so I thought it wasn't that big of a deal. So, this is the boss room, which I will cover in the next part. One key detail you may have noticed in this area is that there is no NPCs or Eye Apostles. This is simply because it's supposed to be an overrun, abandoned area, so the Tree Dracos and Flora is supposed to be more of the antagonistic thing. The Eye Basilisk boss is a reoccurring Eye Apostle enemy, so I thought that would be enough in terms of enemy placement, but maybe a few eye enemies here and there would be better, but I didn't think it made too much sense narratively for them to really be here, so I simply didn't do it. Hello, I'm back, sorry. So, carrying on climbing these routes, you may notice that these routes are all angling towards the corpse power here, as well as the mother Tree Draco being very nearby. So, I wanted to show that a lot of the wildlife and energy is all being drawn to this location, as well as the Gaze of D with the Eye Basilisk in this ruined tomb. Sorry. And going this way, you get insight to the enemy being here, so you can kill them quickly and avoid being snagged up by them coming around here. So we'll go into the final boss room. So you get a viewpoint in, provided you're on the roof. You can drop down if you want, but there's not much reason to. But it's pretty much the same. So coming into this room, you'll immediately find out that this is a giant's tomb with oversized coffins, broken pillars, these wild tree roots breaking through, and the ominous green glow emanating from a pulled out coffin. This is all very much implicit storytelling here, but the Eye Basilisk is the main antagonist of the player at this stage of the game, so reaching this in the level 2 and finally slaying him and gaining a new corpse part is a fitting reward. So the gameplay in this room takes place such as dodging AoE fire blast behind this pillar and this pillar over here, avoiding fire on the ground by jumping onto these, and then on the final attack this guy will occasionally make different ones of these intermittently burst up in flames by stabbing his tail into the corpse parts, which make all these ones resonate and let out soul fire. So the kind of fight will be dashing in to do damage, dashing out to avoid fire, jumping around here, avoiding different ones every now and then, and then just going in for your opportune strikes. After felling this beast, you come in here to find out he's been nesting in this corpse part, reiterating that these things give power, and the player will then take this corpse part, being one of the feet of Goliath, and then be able to, well, jump out of this, which I'll quickly clip out of, sorry, just to demonstrate, but be able to jump out of that, and then be able to carry on with their pathing, which will lead to a shortcut. They can jump up here and go that way now, if they want to, because they didn't already, and they'll take a lift down back to this area. And then they can use their new jump functionality on the closed bridge there, as well as the bridge being trapped by these enemies here. So, that is Graspmancer, and I hope you all enjoyed. Alright, thank you so much.